In the name of the Father, the Son, the Spirit, one God, Amen. The Coptic Orthodox Church. This is one of the oldest church all over the world.
The Coptic Church is one of the most ancient churches all over earth. Roughly speaking, the year 58 AD to 60 maybe, St. Mark the evangelist who came to Egypt, he established the church officially, ordaining bishop with him and priests, deacons.
And of course there was fertile ground in Egypt because the ancient Egyptians had concepts of a triune God, they had concepts of an afterlife, had concepts of judgment, and all of that resonated once St. Mark started speaking about Christianity. And we know that for a fact that directly after that, Christianity spread quite quickly in Egypt. And we've had Christianity in Egypt for the past over 2,000 years uninterrupted. So the three major contributions of the church have been, first of all, theologically. You know, when we look at the creed that all the churches use now, that was originally formulated by Athanasius, the 20th Pope of our church, when he was still a deacon. And then monasticism, you know, with St. Anthony going to the wilderness in the 4th century, and so every monk and nun around the world has his or her origins in Egyptian monasticism. And thirdly, in martyrdom. So martyrdom is something we have lived as a church. We've lived some sort of persecution in the church from the very beginning. St. Mark himself, who established the church, established Christianity, died as a martyr in Egypt for his faith. Since then, we've had the struggles of various types of occupation in Egypt.
Firstly, from the Romans, the Roman Empire, and then secondly, from the Muslims after the entrance of Islam to Egypt in the 7th century.
And within a few hundred years, the demographic then shifted from being 85% Christian to about 15% Christian, which stays until today. So having a community that is a minority Christian community within a majority Muslim country, within a majority Muslim region, the Middle East and the Gulf, makes it problematic and shows then that there are struggles.
I can say that this is the nature of being Christian, is to be persecuted and discriminated against. And till today, till the 21st century, the church is offering martyrs. We heard about those who've been slaughtered, beheaded by ISIS in Libya a couple of years ago or 3 years ago. And every now and then there is something like that. This is the nature of our church.
So there is a significant exodus of Christians from the Middle East, except Egypt, and it remains as the biggest presence.
I started the church here in Vancouver, 1995. So it is 24 years now. And I started with less than 20 families. We are over 300 families now. Yeah.
The fact that there are Coptic Christians now in so many countries outside of Egypt is a reality of their migration movement, and the church serves them. So 15% are in Egypt. Our assessment is Copts outside of Egypt, I think, would be between 1.5 and 2 million. So about 10% outside of Egypt. So 90% still live in Egypt. The first misconception is, what, there are Christians in Egypt? Another misconception is that it is antiquated and irrelevant. And that's not the case at all. We are very dynamic. It's a very scripturally centered church. It's not just about bells and smells. It's theologically very grounded. So Coptic art is beautiful. It incorporates a very idealized style. So it's not supposed to be a realistic face. It's ideal. It obviously comes directly after the Pharaonic. And so when you look at the Pharaonic art and the Coptic art, they're very similar because it's just a progression. Lots of symbolism. When you speak to an iconographer, you never say they paint an icon, they write an icon, because there is lots of theology in the icon. So it's a method of teaching. It's a method of showing what we believe and how we believe it. One of the most distinctive is Coptic face. People will say, oh, they all look the same. That's actually intentional. As Coptic Christians, as Egyptian Christians, we are indigenous people who've been there since the very beginning. And I do think it's important for people to know who we are and what the church is. Not because we want notoriety or fame, but because it is one of the ancient manifestations of the church and is still very much alive and very much dynamic. And I think that's really important for all of us.